It'll take us just a moment, and here we are live. Hi, everybody. Those of you who are tuning in this morning, I'm Marcy Kearns. I'm the Associate Artistic Director at Milwaukee Chamber Theater, and I'm here this morning delighted to have Louis Douthit, who is the CEO and Creative Director of Play on Shakespeare. We're going to be talking a little bit about Shakespeare, talking a little about Louis, and talking a little bit about a very special reading we have coming up at MCT this week online. Hi, Louis. Thanks for being
with us. How are
you? I'm doing so well. Thank you for asking that. And I know right before we went on broadcast, we were chatting a little bit. One of the things that I am really appreciating these days is the sun, is the sunlight. And in Romeo and Juliet, I just keep thinking about the juxtaposition of day and night. And
well, that's it. One of his many tricks is contrast. There it is, right away. Day and night comedy, tragedy, and certainly really kind of at full force, I think, in this play too. I flew over you last night, I guess, on my way home from Ohio. I flew over Colorado where you are. There were storms in your area, and there's some storms here today. So I think we need the rain where I am. I don't know about where you are, but
it's like that a lot. So for those of you who are seeing a different background this morning, yes, I'm actually quarantining for a bit in Colorado. So hello to Wisconsin, how I miss you and how I'll be back soon. But yeah, that in the Rockies, I think we're in the section of the Rockies that unless I have the stats wrong or unless things have changed, there is more electrical activity right here than anywhere else in the United States, or at least in the lower 48, apart from Kissimmee, Florida.
Wow.
So yeah, we get a lot. We get a lot coming over the Front Range.
Oh wow! All right, exciting. Well, okay.
It is. So hey everyone. I know I introduced what we're going to be speaking about in general, but for those of you who don't yet know or haven't yet seen, as a special adventure and offering among our Summer Wednesday readings and special events, we are assembling a cast of Milwaukee theater veteran professionals and favorites to read a translation. Yes, I use that word very specifically. A modern verse translation of Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. The translator is Hansel Jung. So first, I want to start off as we dig into this a little bit deeper. Louis, can you tell us about yourself? So where are you from? How'd you end up at Oregon Shakespeare Festival? What led you to Shakespeare?
I'm just now the age where I could say to people who are younger than I am, there is no plan. That there is no plan. I assure you, I did not think I was going to end my career being, what my Shakespeare mentor has said, contributing to the demise of Western civilization with this translation project. Now, I'm a little ornery, so maybe a little bit, but maybe not by Shakespeare. So, look, I was minding my own business. Honestly, I really was about 25 years ago, and hoping for a modest academic career at a mid-sized university with a good football program. So there, where I'm from. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Ohio. Love that Ohio State marching band with like deep passion. Always wanted to be. That's the only reason I want to go to Ohio State. Anyway, and it's a great university besides a good theater program too. Anyway, I'm minding my own business, hoping for this, very modest career when a door opened up. And my motto in life is you go through those doors that open up and you just hope that first step isn't a big fat Lulu. You know what I mean? Like, whoops.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, although it turned out to be, but like a good whoops. Mm-hmm. And it was an offer it was like an 8-month internship at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And I thought, well, this is hilarious. I know nothing about Shakespeare, but I know a lot about new plays. And I'd become a very good cheerleader for new plays. And they were looking for someone to work in the literary office. And I was in between jobs. And, there weren't teaching jobs in the mid-90s. Mm-hmm. It's worse now, but there were no teaching jobs in the mid-90s. And I thought, well, I've done summer stock before. How bad could this be? I'd never been to Ashland. I'd never been to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I knew nothing about it except that a colleague at the University of Arizona, I was getting my master's degree, had written her thesis about it. And I may have read her thesis. I don't really know, but that was it. It was like, oh, it's Shakespeare. So that's what happened. So I arrive. It's January 1994.
Mm-hmm.
And, minding my own business in the corner, reading 9 plays a day, as you used to in the literary manager day. When you were young, they gave, you had a quota of how many plays you had to read a week. It just felt like it. And you were just always in a corner, like Bob Cratchit or something. And, nobody was paying any attention. I was just reading these plays. And they were off doing their wonderful things that they do. And it came around time, like a couple months into when we opened the season, and there was a tiny little theater called the Black Swan Theater, which had like 78 or 112 people. I don't know what it was, but it was always jammed. Like it was sold out before they even announced it. Like people just craved that intimate work, and some new work was done in there, but it was also like reimagined work, like a Cymbeline with, you know what I mean, like reconstructed. Some people were just craving that, along with the diet of outdoor glory, right, and also sort of the modern contemporary work in the Boomer, because the stats are people come for 3 or 4 days, they see 3 or 4 plays, kind of thing, right? So you get this kind of beautiful range. Anyway, it was so always packed out. Like as a first, like I never got into the Thomas, like for years myself, just like couldn't get a ticket. And I'm walking across from the parking lot to the building, and I see a sign that says, "I need cure." And that was referring to Cure of Troy, which was a modern adaptation of Philoctetes, that Seamus Heaney, you're the dramatic literature person, anyway, had done, that we were producing, and I need a ticket to it. And I thought, where in the world am I that someone needs a ticket to a theater performance? I'll tell you, that puts a little spring in your step. And so, there was something there. It's not just that there's lithium in the water, but there is.
Not too dissimilar with our Wisconsin folks who probably feel that way about Spring Green in America.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was just awesome. And I thought, who are these amazing people who come and make this huge effort and absorb like sponge, and need it? There's never been a time in my career when somebody doesn't say the theater is dying. It might actually be now, but I don't think so. We can talk about that too. But there's always theater time. It's like, yeah, actually, theatrical activity has never been more pervasive than it is today. That's the irony of it, right? But people wanting to come together, commune, like, ooh, there's something here. And they let me keep reading the plays, and eventually I got to dramaturg some. I learned by in the old-fashioned apprenticeship way from those who came before me. I was allowed in the room, and then more and more responsibility. And I learned about Shakespeare at the feet of Barry Crafts, our OSF Shakespeare emeritus, who's an actor in the company, and asked the question, like, what am I really saying, kind of thing. And it was a lifetime exploring about that. And I learned from him and from Scott Kaiser, who at the time was head of voice and text and a director and an adapter in his own right. So that's how it happened. Like bit by bit, I got bit. And eventually, it's in the air. Shakespeare's in the air. Even I, with as much face shielding as perhaps I had, it got to me too. So, there's a thing on NPR now. I don't know the name of the program, but it has to do with composers. And so, like, in this day in history, such and such was premiered. So, it's like a little blurb about classical music, essentially. And the tagline is, just remember, and again, I'm going to quote this wrong, but the idea, I think I got the idea right. Just remember that all music was new once. And I say, remember, Shakespeare was new once. So what happened is that I applied my new play lens to Shakespeare, and my Shakespeare lens to new plays. And that's I don't know, that's my style.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a really wonderful philosophical bent because it requires you at every turn, you, as in anyone looking at it, to truly seek clarity and meaning and to truly seek what it means to one in the present moment. To seek
Right.
clarity in a way that I think we often tend to, oh, I may, I find very often happens with Shakespeare that there's a sense of, well, this is understood. That this is just, these are great words. So or this passage, some of my student actors, they know it so well after a certain point, the text so well that they start to detach the text from the meaning behind it. And I think that maybe happens with any work that one knows really well and recites really
Yeah.
well or
Yeah.
performs. But I think we tend to do that as hearers too, and not just as artists when it comes to Shakespeare too often.
Yeah, and since I did not have, I mean, look, I have 10 letters after my name. I'm way overschooled. Clearly, it takes a while for me to get anything in my head. I'm overeducated, really. And still and yet, I had very little Shakespeare exposure by choice. We were talking before we went live. Your path going down dramatic literature, and mine was always theater. I'm not saying I didn't say dramatic literature, but it's from the theater. And Shakespeare was never taught in the theater department; it was always in the English department. And I just, I so appreciate that work. Oh my God, we owe a debt, a huge debt to the archaeology that cultural historians, and English professors, and lovers of literature have given to us about, reclaiming this material and explaining it. However, I think that there's still kind of a pragmatic underpinning there, and I'm the pragmatist, and so that's what I really wanted to do. And so for me, coming into the room and say, you know what, guys, I really don't hear. I don't. What just happened? Just tell me what just happened. Somebody's now in a red outfit and they were in a blue outfit before. So clearly they changed teams, right? I got that. But why? Right. And so that probably led to this, not consciously, not laid out, that suddenly I'd be examining these things with this wackadoodle project that just fell in my lap. It just fell in my lap. I'm going to segue right into play on, if that's okay.
Yeah.
They're linked, right? In 2011, maybe, or something like that. I suppose someday I ought to really find out what the history is of this project. But a patron named Dave Hitz came to Bill Rausch and said, I will pay I will pay for the commission of someone to translate Shakespeare into contemporary modern English. And Bill, being Bill, who's always like way ahead of his time, very much a visionary, is like, not sure we quite understood what he was talking about, said, and I knew enough to translate into yes. So suddenly those two had figured out a deal where Bill would get 2 or 3 adaptations, which is what Bill was interested in. And at the time we were doing something called The Very Merry Wives of Windsor, Iowa, which was clearly an adaptation. And so Bill was interested in that, and Dave was interested in these others. So Dave said, all right, I'll pay for some of yours, but you have to do some of mine. Like, it was like this bargain, like R&D bargain. Like, okay. And I'm head of the department at the time, so I was like, okay, falls to me. So I think, well, I have no idea what he's talking about. So let's do the translation part first. Let's just get it out of the way because we don't think it makes any sense. It's not going to work. And then we can have fun having adaptation time. Like that's a lot. That's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to adapt Shakespeare.
And may I ask briefly, not to detour you, but may I ask briefly to clarify in this instance the difference between translation and adaptation for our
Yes, you can. And I will get to it, though. It's part of the story. Sorry, because I didn't know what it was either. So I thought, well, I knew that adaptation kind of meant what Alice Carey had done with Merry Wives. I get that, kind of changing time and place. really, right? And then adapting accordingly and making it fit, like making the clues much more sort of easily accessible to us as being fairly well known, right? Just so in Very Merry Wives of Windsor, Iowa, the story is that Senator John Falstaff, has run out of money in Iowa. He's right, so he needs some cash to get out of the state. And then there's a butter cow at the end. Like, who doesn't love this, right? It's fantastic. The props department had a fantastic time building that butter cow. You can imagine, right? Wisconsin, we love you, right?
Right?
Yeah. Anyway, it was awesome. It was awesome. Anyway, so translation in Dave's mind, because he had read a book about translating Shakespeare around the world, and that the conclusion of that book was, Shakespeare seems more accessible to speakers of a different language when it's of French speakers when it's translated into contemporary French. I don't think it's translated into 16th century French.
Right.
And so that became just sort of an interesting exercise. He's got that kind of mind. So I said, all right, look, let's do the translation. We don't know what that means. We still don't know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, all right, I'm going to take it seriously because it's a lot of money he's given us, and I want to be honorable about it. And so I approached Kenneth Cavender, who is a fine translator of Greek tragedies. Now, I can't think of anyone more serious than someone who would translate Greek tragedies. And so I said, pretend it really is a translation from source language to target language. How would you go about doing it? And from his experimentations and his kind of working through text, he's the one that kind of shaped what translation meant. So it came to mean, if you look at plays built with different pieces and parts to them, right? Everything stayed the same except the language, right? So it became kind of a photo-negative experiment because mostly in Shakespeare production, we set it in contemporary times. And then we keep the Elizabethan language, which is odd if you think about it. But we've grown, right? To your point about hearing, we think, oh, that's normal, but really it's odd. So I just want us to acknowledge that it's odd. I don't mind that we buy it, but it is odd, right? So what do you do with Bear Bodkin, for instance, in contemporary times? I said, okay, let's just do a complete opposite. Let's just go the absolute extreme. Because I think you learn things in extreme. I don't like to stay in extremes, but I think you learn things from extremes. So that's basically what we did. Language was the only thing that got touched. And within that touch, it was first, do no harm. There's a lot of things that make perfect sense to us today. And then, go line by line and kind of massage, interact, blend, rewrite if necessary. Things that just seem a little gnarly, and they had to do the whole play. They couldn't edit the play. They couldn't change genders. They couldn't change time period. They couldn't fix it. First thing Amy Fried wanted when I offered her Taming of the Shrew, she said, well, I don't really want to do that. I want to fix the play. And I said, well, look, you do my thing first, and then you can fix the play all to your heart's desire. And she has. She's fixed it called Shrew, ! And it was produced at South Coast a couple years ago. Delightful. But I'm very proud that the translation kind of spurred that, right? So that's kind of what happened. And so then Kenneth, we chose Timon of Athens because I knew this was going to be a controversial project. I did know enough about Shakespeare to know you don't mess with the language. Like that's just been passed down from time immemorial, or at least through the 20th century. You don't mess with the language, right? Which I have already expressed I have problems with. So I was like, okay, then I'll just work really, really, really hard. I'll learn every footnote there ever is. I'll look at every version, or I'll cram it in. And still and yet at 78 RPMs, again, I'm showing my age, which is the speed of Shakespeare. I got bogged down. And we cut them all anyway. That's an adaptation, in my opinion, right? So I have a very, very, very small definition, very precise definition of translation, and a very wide definition of adaptation. Just about everything we do. And the thing we're reading on Wednesday is an adaptation because it's cut, as well as it's been translated, right? The big controversy, of course, was the word translation.
Mhm.
because people think word for word. And what were we going to do? We're going to dumb it down. Was it going to be No Fear Shakespeare, which has its place, I dare say, and has come into many a rehearsal room. I get it. I get it. But that was not my definition. My definition is carry forward, which is the fourth definition. I want to have as immediate an experience as what I think happened 400 years ago. And I think 400 years ago, it was contemporary. I think you said these and thous in the street. I think the language was much more contemporary sounding. And yes, a little formal through the lens of I am. I get that. But it also was a very highly poetic period and a highly musical period. And we have both today. There are different kinds of poetry and different kinds of music, but we are ironically quite Elizabethan now. But I wanted that. I wanted it to carry forward. I wanted to get more deeply, personally, emotionally involved with characters making decisions in front of me because I knew what the consequences were and I knew what the intentions were and I knew like, oops, that was bad. Longer, there's still times where I just kind of wait for the clowns, please just come in, because at least I know they're trying to be funny, yeah. So that's I hope that answered your question about translation. So that's what happened. So we did Timon of Athens because we figured nobody would really care what we did Timon of Athens. Truth, nobody cared, which was and to my knowledge, my very minimal knowledge, I don't believe it was produced in his lifetime. Anyway, it is in the folio. So that's all very curious. And it does seem to be an incomplete play, or at least something that had not, the difference between like a draft of a play that has not ever been produced, and then the other side, like, oh, you've, solved something. So like the new Playgirl was, oh yeah, I can see that the bones are here, but they hadn't worked stuff out yet. They didn't have great actors to work things out yet, right? So that said, Kenneth does this translation, and it's really good. And by golly, the Alabama Shakespeare Festival produces it, and it's really good. Mm-hmm. And I think on the way home, I distinctly remember thinking, what is this? So being ambitious and not wanting to wait till I was 82 to have somebody translate Edward III, I said I wanted to do all of them in a short period of time. And so I went back to Dave Hitz and I said, I want to do all of them because English does change quickly. Mm-hmm. I think, there are new words being added all the time, or the way we structure our language, and goodness knows in the last 10 years of text structure, syntax, and it's fascinating, right? So the different ways we can communicate now. And I said, I just wanted to capture I don't know, contemporary modern English right this very minute for over the 5-year period. What was it? What was it in the 2015s to 2020s to 2020? I want as many and wide a variety of playwrights as possible, right? Early career, mid-career, late career, women, many writers of color, non-English speakers, as first language, right? And it wasn't meant to be prescriptive. There are pockets, if you looked at it, like, ooh, you missed some pockets. I was like, yeah, I did. But a lot of it was just like, who would say yes to me? Because we're in an amazing period of American playwriting right now. I could have done this. I could have cast this 4 times over without breaking into a sweat.
Truth.
I mean, amazing writers, right? So I was lucky that these 36 or however many there were said yes to me. I was like, good, we're going to do this experiment. And then in 2015, we make this announcement, and then social media blows up. Yeah, okay. I think mostly over the word translation, and I get it. So the hardest thing about it is that there have been few opportunities to hear one, and I cannot explain what it is. I know I just did, but it actually doesn't make sense. And you have to hear one, and I can't wait for you, Marcy, to hear it tomorrow in rehearsal, because there's something odd, wonderfully odd, and fresh, as if for the first time. So my motto is hearing Shakespeare differently, playing Shakespeare, hearing, and I think you'll hear it differently, and you'll hear things you've never heard before, because some things have been cleared up that you're not spending time worrying about that, and then you're getting sort of the heat of the moment. So the dramaturg in me, the one who cares about the structure of the play, is delighted that collectively we get the same piece of information at the same piece at the same time, so that we can carry forward till the end of the play, like just like what I think a good play is. So and Romeo and Juliet's a great play. There's no doubt about it. So did I answer your question? I think I kind of went sideways, but anyway.
No, that's just fine. I actually, I'm so glad that you brought up tomorrow and what we're going to be doing. With the cast that we have assembled, these are some of my favorite actors in town. I wish I could have gotten them all, everybody in town, but we have an amazing slate of veterans. In fact, one of them, our actor playing Tybalt, actually had played Tybalt some years ago opposite Tom Cruise's Romeo. So
why wouldn't we want that expertise in the room?
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait. I am so touched, and I will be so honored and humbled to be with them, because I'm a new play girl. It's like, get the person with the most experience to work on your damn play while you're, anyway. I know that Milwaukee has a lot of actors who have spent some time,
mm-hmm.
Part of a company, right?
Mm-hmm. It's the kind of community make your living.
That's the group I long to be with again. So I'm grateful.
Oh, I'm delighted. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left, so I would love to pick your brain just a little bit about Romeo and Juliet itself. Do you recall? I know that this might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but do you recall the history of its commission and reading and your first experience of it in translation?
Oh, you mean with Hansel, not like in whatever it was? Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah. I do. Romeo and Juliet was the second to last play to be taken. Nobody wanted Romeo and Juliet. You can understand.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that would be true of Midsummer Night's Dream, but Jeff Whitty happened to sit in my office one day, and he said, "I'll take it." And I thought, "Oh, great!" So that was good. But I did not know Hansel at all. I had read a couple of her plays. And I thought, well, as I said, I wanted a range of writers, and they couldn't all be friends of Louis. I mean, that was just a narrow band, and I had to bust out of my narrow band, right? I had to learn something too, and open myself up. And so I asked Hansel, and she said she took it on. And she said during the process, she said to me, Louis, I've highlighted all the famous speeches, and I'm not going to touch those. And I said, well, I don't know. You're going to have 4 lines left or something. I mean, like, what are you going to do? I said, no, you have to work a little harder at that. But I totally appreciate her reticence. Like, what? How do I? Because to your point, we kind of think we know it, and we do know it, actually. Whether we know it literally or not and we can debate degrees of literalness. But let me just say, overall, that 400 years of time, we have become more literal and less metaphoric.
I agree with that.
Right. And so when you have a play, you have to explain a little bit more than you might. That's all. So as you're carrying forward, as a director, you have to translate the conventions of one time period, which is inscribed in that play, into the right. Okay. So if you're just looking at language, anyway, I said, you got to work a little bit harder. But we had a huge fight about the these and the thous, which you'll notice she continued. Yes. Huge fight. I don't love them, but there was no rule about it, because I thought, okay, like I've asked these playwrights to go in and walk with Shakespeare. I've asked them for their opinion about this and how it works. And while I have a problem with the these and thous, because I'm always thinking, like, is that formal, informal? Meanwhile, the play is going on. That seems stupid to me, my own personal opinion. But I was like, okay, because you'll notice when she changes her rule. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I want people to listen to this reading on Wednesday night and see if they can find when she changes her rule. So there was that.
Great.
And then the second thing is, I'll just say 2 other things. I know we're running out of time, but I'll just say 2 things. One is the comedy is much funnier in her version, and you'll be shocked. You'll be shocked at how funny it is, and really dirty.
Oh, it's so dirty.
Yeah, right. Okay. And then the last thing, just to say, I think 400 years ago, people went to hear a play. Today, we go to see a play. And I'm asking everybody, hear Shakespeare differently. Just hear it on Wednesday night, and just enjoy that at that level. It is not the play. It is not the play in production. It is just the oral experience, which I think was 90 to 95% of the experience 400 years ago. And I'm trying to replicate that a little bit.
Thank you for that. And for those of you who are listening and those of you who will listen later, I will echo Louie's wish that you join us here Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, to hear some really stunning local Milwaukee actors explore and experiment with this modern verse translation. Thanks so much for joining us today, Louie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marcy.
I look forward to working with you the next couple days.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be great. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.